Welcome to our channel Psyverge. Why do some people seem to hate you for simply existing? Why do they glare when you walk into a room with quiet confidence? Why do your wins feel like insults to them, even when you've done nothing to provoke it? We all have them. Those people who linger in the shadows of our lives, hoping we'll trip, fall, or falter. People who take your silence as arrogance and your success as an attack. But here's the real question. How do you deal with them without lowering yourself? How do you win the psychological game without ever speaking a word? Niccolo Machiavelli, the ruthless political philosopher of the Renaissance, would tell you this: don't fight your enemies on their terms. Smile. Not out of kindness, but as a form of elegant warfare. To Machiavelli, power wasn't just about brute strength. It was about perception, timing, and the ability to dominate without appearing to. When you smile at someone who wants to see you crumble, you're doing something deeply unsettling. You're showing that their hatred holds no power over your state of mind. You remain unmoved, and nothing bruises the ego of a hater more than their inability to affect you. Let's get one thing straight. Haters don't actually want to defeat you. They want to disrupt your emotional stability. They want to occupy your thoughts, twist your energy, and watch you react. Because the moment you react, the moment you speak back, defend yourself, or flare up, you give them exactly what they want: confirmation that they matter to you. Machiavelli's philosophy warns against this vulnerability. He believed that exposing your emotional soft spots, even in the name of truth or justice, weakens your position. So how do you flip the script? How do you break their pride without ever raising your voice? Psychologically, the human ego craves control, especially over people it resents. When someone hates you, it's not always because of something you did. It's often because of what you represent: strength, independence, indifference, success. Your very presence becomes a mirror that reflects what they lack. And your silence? That's deafening. But your smile? That's blinding. A calm smile does something words can't. It disturbs. It reframes the power dynamic. Because in that moment, you're not defending, you're declaring. You're saying, I see you, and I am not threatened. From a dark psychological angle, smiling at your enemies is the highest form of dominance. It's non-verbal superiority. It's elegant warfare. Why? Because it taps into what psychologists call incongruent messaging. The hater expects a scowl, a rebuttal, a breakdown, but you give them warmth. They prepare for conflict, and you give them calm. That mismatch short-circuits their expectations, and suddenly, they're left questioning their entire narrative about you. Machiavelli would argue that power isn't just something you seize, it's something you signal. And nothing signals power more than emotional control in the face of hostility. Think of this. What do bullies need more than anything? A reaction. They feed on it. But if you offer none, if you keep walking, keep thriving, and offer only a smirk, it dismantles them piece by piece. You're not just ignoring them, you're reducing their presence to background noise. And that is a deep psychological blow, because now they're not your rival. They're irrelevant. Machiavelli understood that the battlefield isn't always physical. It's psychological. It's reputational. In politics, in life, and in social circles, people are always watching. So when someone disrespects you or tries to tear you down, your reaction becomes your reputation. If you explode, you validate their narrative. If you plead, you admit weakness. But if you smile, you write your own story. There's a power in restraint that most people underestimate. A smile, subtle and knowing, becomes your shield and your sword. It says, "You don't bother me. I've already won." And here's the kicker. Your haters are not just reacting to you. They're competing with an image of you in their mind. That image might be inflated, imagined, or distorted, but it haunts them. They feel small next to it. They want to bring you down so they can feel equal. But Machiavelli would say, never descend to meet your enemies. Rise so far above that they cannot follow. This is why indifference, when paired with confidence, is such a potent weapon. And the smile? That's the mask of the victor. There's something profoundly threatening about someone who refuses to play by the rules of emotional retaliation. Hatred is loud, it's explosive, it wants attention. But smiling is the quiet rebellion. It's the message that you're not caught in their orbit, and that drives them mad. From a strategic standpoint, your calmness destabilizes their tactics. It makes them look irrational while you appear centered. Over time, this imbalance eats away at their pride. They start to see that their emotional investment in you has returned. Nothing. No disruption. No satisfaction. Only silence and success. That's Machiavellian brilliance. You become untouchable not because you shouted louder, but because you stood quieter, taller, and smiled. And here's something else Machiavelli would approve of. Using your haters as fuel, not for vengeance, but for refinement. Every insult, every sneer, every attempt to undermine you becomes another reason to polish your composure. You don't respond out of weakness. You transform their energy into psychological armor. And nothing is more Machiavellian than turning your enemies into silent contributors to your strength. In the art of power, perception is everything. People will try to bait you, provoke you, scandalize your name. But you don't win by playing their game. You win by changing the game entirely. By appearing so calm, so unmoved, that their efforts dissolve in real time. A smile becomes your line in the sand. It separates you from them without needing an explanation. And when that smile is paired with progress, when you keep growing, creating, living fully, it doesn't just protect your peace. It ruins their strategy. Because now, the only thing they can talk about is someone who isn't talking back. In dark psychology, this is called silent psychological retaliation. It doesn't make noise. It makes impact. It triggers internal conflict in the minds of those who want to break you. They start to question why they hate you, why their energy is wasted, and worst of all, they begin to see you as untouchable. That, right there, is how you destroy pride without ever raising a hand. And maybe that's what makes it so effective. When you smile at your haters, you're not forgiving them. You're not agreeing with them. You're exposing them. You're holding up a mirror and forcing them to see their own obsession. And in that moment, they're no longer looking at you. They're looking at themselves. Machiavelli's genius was in understanding human weakness, especially in those who thought they were strong. He knew that to break a man's pride, you don't humiliate him directly. You let him humiliate himself by trying to attack someone who won't even flinch. So next time you feel the heat of jealousy, the sting of passive aggression, or the weight of unwarranted hate, don't lash out, don't explain, don't justify. Smile. Walk through it like it was wind. Because the stronger your silence, the louder their insecurity will become. And in that space between their anger and your indifference is your victory. But let's go deeper into the psychological mechanics here. Why does a smile have such devastating power in the face of hate? Because it violates their emotional script. People who hate you are performing a role. They've cast themselves as your opposition, and they expect you to play your part, to feel insulted, offended, defensive, or shaken. That's the narrative they've built. But when you meet that aggression with calm poise and a gentle smile, you aren't just stepping out of the script, you're flipping the genre. What was supposed to be a drama becomes a silent comedy, and now they're the only actor left performing in a scene you've walked out of. This is why Machiavelli warned against being too predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. Your enemies study your emotions. They look for patterns, triggers, weak spots. But when you become unreadable, when your only response is a subtle, unreadable smile, you become unreadable, unreachable, untouchable. And this isn't about fake positivity. This isn't about being kind to those who hurt you. This is about control. This is about turning yourself into someone whose dignity cannot be stolen. A person who owns their reactions, owns their time, and owns their focus. It might sound strange, but the smile becomes a form of psychological warfare. Not because it's cheerful, but because it's deliberate. It communicates everything without you having to say anything. I am not shaken by you. I do not need to respond, and I do not live in the world you're trying to create. Machiavelli would see this as the ultimate form of power, because to remain silent, you must first master your inner world. You must crush the impulse to retaliate. You must see clearly through the fog of ego and realize that your enemies are desperate to matter. But they don't. Not unless you let them.